is happening, flip flop fam? I'm super excited to have Roy Osing here with me today. But Roy, for people who don't know, who are you and what do you do?
Well, I'm a guy that took a startup to a billion in sales. Is kind of like the way I would summarize it. My whole life, quite frankly, has been spent trying to figure out how to be different, how to differentiate businesses and people in a way that matter to others. And I'm not talking about narcissism. I'm talking about being different in a way that other people care about. So my whole life has been doing that, and it culminated, quite frankly, in being asked to take an internet company in the day and try to grow it, and we did. And I get goosebumps thinking about this, dude, because we went from I don't know even where we were at the time, but we ended up at a billion in annual sales, and today that business is 18 billion a year. So I
Incredible.
kind of like to think that my team had a little bit to do with getting the traction to get there.
Yeah, for sure. I think most of our listeners are in that small business category. They're a billion's I hope it is, but it's probably not in their future. You and I were talking before we hit record about blue ocean versus red ocean. So first, I'd love for you to explain people who don't know what that means, what that is. And you say 99% of us are living in the red ocean and we need help.
Yeah, so a couple of guys wrote a book called the Blue Ocean Strategy a while ago, and the premise, they were academics, professors. The premise was really simple. If you want to be successful, you got to find a marketplace or a space where there's no competition. Okay, duh, right? I mean, right away I go, duh. And the book was replete with substantiation and not much on how to do this. So it was really kind of like a theoretical kind of like treatise, on what would be nirvana in kind of the real world. And of course, for me, I'm a practitioner, right? I'm a guy in the trenches. And by the way, I'm not suggesting everybody's going to get to a billion. What I am suggesting is there are some secrets along the way that hopefully I can share that will help you grow your business beyond your expectations. That's the whole point. Anyways, back to the blue oceans. And in the book, it actually talks about the blue ocean being nirvana, and that's where you should end up. But it acknowledges that in the real world, most businesses are in red oceans, and a red ocean is an ocean with just lots of competition and right, bloodletting day in and day out as you fight for share, et cetera, et cetera. And I guess the position I took is look at, I mean, okay, go ahead and sort of assuage yourself and talk about blue oceans all you want. But the reality is every small business that's listening to this podcast is in a red ocean. They don't need the theoretical objective of trying to find the blue one. If they hit on it accidentally, good for you. But the reality is you're probably going to be sitting in a red ocean day in and day out trying to survive. That's my space. That's where we need to get to. That's the area that we have to provide help in. And there are some solutions, okay, that have been proven, simple stuff that I did that I like to share with people that actually kind of like get the adrenaline flowing, get the heart pumping. Because by the way, results don't come from the mind, right? They come from the heart and the passion and the gut.
And
That's
that's
where
the
they
truth.
come from. So my objective in life is to stir you up.
I love it. I love it. And I know you've written 7 books on the topic, so I want to get to those. But, you know, I've heard it said I work with a lot of other coaches as well that are kind of up and coming and they're trying to find their niche. And we have that blue and red ocean conversation a lot. And I'm curious if you agree with this. Blue ocean's great, but if there's a red ocean, that means a lot of other people are doing it already and a lot of other people are making money at it already. So therefore, there might be some opportunity there for you. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I absolutely. I think there's opportunities to survive, and I think there's opportunities to thrive. But the point I want to make is if you spend all your life trying to find a blue ocean, you will die, okay? Because you will hit on it accidentally. And I'm not saying that it's not possible, it is. But for most of us, mere mortals, okay, in the business world, we have to scrap, okay, using techniques that have been proven to actually get advances, improve our performance, et cetera, et cetera. So accept the fact that you're in a red ocean and let us help you survive and thrive in that ocean because there are ways of doing it. I mean, I don't care if there's 100 competitors. I figured out a way to beat them, and it's in a red ocean marketplace. And so why wouldn't you try those sorts of things? Put the textbook down for just a minute and listen to Uncle Roy or Grandpa Roy here because he's got some stuff that he wants to share with you.
I love it. I love it. You know, your motto, be different or be dead, which I absolutely love. You know, talk about that and then let's get into the juice, man. You know, you're tantalizing us with these tips and techniques that are going to allow us to survive in this red ocean. Let's dive in.
So the Be Different or Be Dead genesis is really a realization that hit me really, really early in my life. Okay, and it was all about standing out, getting noticed in the way people care about, being observed as somebody willing to take risks and non-conformance, contrarian, disruption. I mean, it kind of, I think I got it from my mom, and it's like in my veins. I can't think, I can't do anything else. When I look at something, I go, well, what if I do a 180 to that? What if I go a right angle turn to that and explore those things? And as we were entering into from a monopoly telephone company into the data and internet space, it was painfully obvious to me that we had to be different. Okay, we weren't going to survive by continuing to exhibit monopolistic behaviors anymore. There's just way too many red ocean dudes out there ready to eat our lunch, etc. And so the Be Different or Be Dead mantra was all is came about, and it's all about differentiation. I mean, I've been asked what do I think is the single most important significant challenge in business today, and it's differentiation because it's not done well. We keep using words like better, best, number one, market leader, and it's claptrap, okay? My word for that is claptrap because it's not believable. And I figured out a way through all of that, but it was driven by this incessant desire to understand what people crave and stand out in the way you satisfy that craving and be the only one that does what you do. That's the genesis of Be Different or Be Dead. And that's the power of differentiation in that respect. The problem we have is, right, textbook thinking and the momentum of the past talks about unique selling propositions. And that whole theory is absolutely bogus because there's nothing unique about it. Like it talks about what Roy can do to solve a problem, but what it doesn't talk about is how can Roy solve the problem in a way that nobody else can. That's the secret of true differentiation. And so to try and get people off the track of the past onto the Be Different or Be Dead track, it is, man, I got to tell you, it's tough. I mean, it is tough.
You know, you bring up we're number one, we're the best. And it makes me think of driving down the highway and every fireworks place is the world's largest fireworks place. And you're like, how can they all be the world's largest? This is amazing.
Well, that's a really good comment because what we're taught to do these days is copy, right? The benchmarking thing. Well, go find best in class and copy them. I mean, how stupid is that? How can you be different when you're copying anybody? And I don't care if you're a fast follower or not. You cannot be different. And yet, that's what's being espoused out there. And all you're doing is increasing what I call the herd of sameness. If you're in the herd of sameness, you are doomed to die. I guarantee it, unless, of course, you run into success accidentally, or if you have economies of scale and scope. Now, I would be willing to bet that 100% of your listeners don't have the benefits of scale and scope. Okay, let's just say that. And so what we have to do is scratch for success by doing the right things better than everybody else and being the only one that does that way.
Yeah. What are those right things?
Well, it starts out with having a strategy that is actually built to execute. Okay, like I would bet, because I do an awful lot of work with small business owners and startup CEOs, and the one thing that they hate doing, okay, is creating context for their actions. So I call building a strategy context, but I do it a little differently, as you might expect. I had to create my own, I call it strategic game planning process. Okay, which is literally built in 48 hours. Okay, so all you guys listening to this, I'm not asking you to take 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks to build context for your actions. We can do this in 2 days. And the strategy building process is really simple, Roderick. It's built around answering three questions. First question is, how big do you want to be? That's a question about top line growth. So where do you want to be in 24 months, by the way? That's the other thing. In a red ocean world, 5-year plans don't exist. Okay, they just don't because it gives you permission to put stuff off to the fourth year. And that always happens, right? So these are 24-month plans built around um, answering, first of all, where do you want to be in terms of growth? I mean, if you're at 5 million today, do you want to be at 10? Do you want to be at 20? Do you want to be at 15? The reason I start with the numbers is the number drives the character and the risk profile of the strategy. And yet the rest of the world does it exactly the opposite. They create the strategy and then they derive the financials from that, right? And then they say, wait a minute, I don't like the numbers. So they go and change the assumptions and they get different numbers and they think, wow, now I solved the problem. Well, you haven't. You haven't changed the freaking strategy. All you've done is change the assumptions. So we start off with how big do you want to be? And the strategy is driven by that. And it's a declaration. If somebody tells me they know how to do it, I say you're not being audacious enough. The number isn't challenging enough. If you say, Roy, I don't know how I'm going to do this, boom. At least we've got the right number now because I'm an advocate that the boldness of the number drives innovation. Because if you already know how you're going to get it, what motivation do you have to be innovative and creative? Zero. Right answer, right? Second question is, where are you going to get the money? And that's my who do you intend to serve question. It says pick the customer groups that have the latent potential to deliver your how big, right? And I don't want you to tell me it's a market in the Western United States. Okay, that's just a little too broad. It's got to be crisp and clear and focused because this is a world where focus pays off. Dilution doesn't. It just does not, right? So I always have fun with my clients. They say, okay, give me one customer group that will deliver that $10 million. And they don't know whether I'm kidding or not. Of course, I'm kidding a little bit. I say, okay, if you can't give me one, give me two. Okay, how about three? But I will not let you give me 12. Because if that's the case, you don't understand your customers well enough. And already we've got a basic problem, right? So the who to serve things of where are you going to get the money? And then we take a deep dive into those 3 or 4 customer groups and ask the simple question, what do they crave? This is not a needs-based world. This is a cravings-based world. And the reason I say that is if you want to survive in a red ocean, you're not going to survive by trying to satisfy what people need. And the simple reason for that is they already have everything they need. Okay. And if you want to play that game, you're going to be playing the price game where margins don't exist and you will die. All right. Cravings, on the other hand, is full of emotion, right? This is the passion side of us. This is the playful side of us where, quite frankly, we're willing to pay premium prices, right? For a craving, to satisfy a craving or an itch, what we covet, what we lust for. That's what I'm talking about, what we desire. And there's no competition. Okay, so what I've really done for you, and I've never thought of this before, you dragged this out of me right now. It's a piece of brilliance, right? I've just created a blue ocean out of a red ocean by what I just said to you. If you want a blue ocean out of your red ocean pain, okay, you find what people crave because nobody else plays in that game at all. That's the second question. Third
Yeah.
question says, okay, how are you going to compete and win? In terms of the customers that you've just chosen, okay, not the market generally, but those customers, how are you going to compete and win? And that's where we get into what I had to create called the only statement. This is a differentiation piece. It says we're going to compete and win in segment 111 by being the only one who. Let me repeat that. By being the only one who. So not by providing the best customer service, not by being the number one provider in terms of digital products. It's being the only one who. And the secret, of course, is to complete that sentence. We do that in literally, Roderick, literally 48 hours. Okay, with the team of business leaders in the room, we don't have subject matter experts. The subject matter experts are in the room, and I pull it out of their head, and we create the strategy. And it's just amazing how it works because it's so simple. And people say to me, I can't believe we got to where we got to in 2 days. Why doesn't everybody do this? And I keep saying, I don't know, man. I mean, welcome to my world. Trying to get people's attention away from strategic planning 101 into something that actually works like this. It's almost too simple to be believed, right? But nevertheless, that is if I want to pick one thing, okay, it's the strategy building process, okay, that makes me different. And the second piece is execution. Because I believe in 20% of your time on the plan, 80% on execution, which is exactly the antithesis of what happens today, right? We spend all of our time trying to make the plan perfect, which is insane because there's no such thing as a perfect anything. And then the rest of the time trying to figure out we're going to implement. I just throw that on its head and say 48 hours in the plan, we're going to spend a lot of time drilling down in that plan to try and figure out how to execute it in an imperfect world where imperfection fast is actually the end game. I want you to be imperfect as fast as you can because you're going to try more things and learn more about it than anybody else out there. And gradually you iterate yourself into a destination that you were entitled to, but you never knew that when you started. You never knew. So the execution piece is all about line of sight leadership, hiring for goosebumps, killing dumb rules, all those complicated esoteric concepts that actually work in the real world. And that's what I did, man. I just did a ton of those things and we just lit fires in people, moved the organization, looked at it every 15 days in terms of metrics. And we just, I practice strategic micromanagement, which drives HR people crazy when I talk to them on podcasts like this. I say, I'm a micromanager. I put my fingerprints on the stuff that a leader should put their fingerprints on, right? Not everything, et cetera. And of course, that raises all sorts of interesting dialogue. But in essence, it boils down to loosen up on your strategy building process, tighten up on execution. And so there's a whole raft of content within each of those silos. Okay, they're basically based on what I did in my life to build a successful business.
Yeah, man, about 12,000 things to unpack there. You ask, well, why don't people think this way? It's because they don't have Uncle Roy. That's why they don't. That's why they don't think this way. You know, the craving piece of that is really what I want to touch on because I see it. I work with a lot of up and coming coaches, like I said, and they are very much of I went to Brown for my ICF, and yes, I can help anyone. I can help anyone with any problem with the basic tenets of coaching because we're all human beings, turns out, most of us. And yet, no one hears that. No one hears that message. So when you ask them, what one thing can you help somebody point A to point B? If I'm a home builder, I can help you build the house. The house is done when it's finished. It's a point A to point B. If I'm a grief counselor, you're going to feel this way in this amount of time. It's all the same stuff. And I think where we get lost, and I see this in the home building world specifically, is there is no niche for them. They're just the best home builder in the city. They're number one. They pay attention to detail. They're craftsmen. And we get lost in the branding because we see Nike and we see Apple, and we don't understand that came after they solved the problem for the one person. The branding comes way down the line when you are a billion-dollar company and you have the money to throw all the spaghetti at all the walls.
Yeah, look it's about context. I mean, the one thing that businesses and individuals love to do is go to what I call the yummy. The yummy is the fun part, which deals with branding and social media platforms and using the AI tools without a context to describe why you're doing it and the purpose for doing it. And so what we just talked about in terms of my strategic game planning process, that's the context building piece, right? And if you don't do that, you will be forever tactically driven towards an end that you haven't defined. So how the hell do you ever know where you're going, right? You'll be driven by anybody that comes up with a gee whiz technical tool. And that's not the way to survive a red ocean. You want to rise above that and you want to use the tools that make sense relative to your strategic ends, okay, that we create in this process. Let me tell you just a story. I just did a really good friend of mine is in the landscaping business. So he cuts lawns. So you talk about basic businesses, okay? He cuts lawns and he weeds gardens. And how the hell can that ever be strategic? He came to me one day and he says, Roy, you need to help me. He says, I just don't know what to do. There's so many things that I could be doing. I'm just not able to sift my way through it. And I said, well, that's because you don't have context, Matt. So let's create context. So I took him through this process. So it turns out that at the end of the process, he actually decided that he's not in the lawn cutting and business at all like that, since he serves what we call up here strata corporations, I think they're called homeowner associations in the US, right? That represent the owners. That's what we agreed that his target market was going to be. Since he did that, to be truly unique, he needs to be in the property development business. So he reframed his business, okay, to be a service partner that delivered property development solutions, and he claimed to be the only one that does that. And of course, he is truly, because nobody's thinking about it that way. I have a boat dealer, a guy in Toronto that sells boats. You probably know him. I'm not going to tell you who he is. Anyways, he sells boats to boat dealers. He thought he was in the boat selling business, but he wasn't. He ends up to be in the business development business to help boat dealers grow their business. And of course, to make a bit of a bad joke of it, it's all predicated and anchored around a boat. But I convinced him that nobody cares if the boat floats unless it doesn't. That's not going to differentiate you, right? So he decided, because the craving piece for him was that what kept the boat dealers awake at night was the fact that they worried about not staying in business. They worried about not being able to grow. And I said, can you play into that? If you played into that, would you be the only one to go, yeah? I said, do you think you could acquire the competencies and the skill set? Yeah, we got. So now they're in the business development business, helping boat dealers grow their business. It's an example of what the context driven benefits are. So instead of screwing around trying to figure out where to buy the cheapest boat, that's not an issue for him anymore. It may be for other people still in the boat selling business, but for him, he's moved on. It's the same with my buddy in landscaping, right? So what he's doing is a single point of contact. He's bringing in painters. He's bringing in snow removal companies. He's creating this package of value that only he provides, and he's able to leverage his relationships to do that. That's the kind of work this is. And so everybody out there that thinks they've got a really mundane, pedantic business, no, you don't. What you need is Uncle Roy, Grandpa Roy, to help you find out what your special sauce is, because you have it. You just don't have the perspective that I have, because I've spent so many years banging away at this, and failing and succeeding. And trust me, trust me.
Yeah. The way to get what you want is to help other people get what they want, right?
Absolutely right.
Yeah, man, we could talk literally for hours. Before we get too far along, I want people to know how they can find you. Website, LinkedIn, Instagram, where you at?
Yeah, so yeah, my website is surprise, be different or be dead.com. So you can come visit me there, and I've tried to put as many resources on the site as possible to help people. Like, for example, I've got a quiz. So if you want to know where you sit on the be different or be dead sort of like continuum, predicated on the things that I did, it's kind of a fun tool. You just go down and it's 25 questions. You rate yourself on a 1 to 5, and the algorithm will calculate your score. And the idea is not exactly to get a high score. Rather, it's to point you in a direction that says, "Ooh, I need to develop my marketing be different competencies, or I need to develop my strategy building competencies." So that's on there, and it's kind of fun to do. You can do it as a team. You can do it as an individual. I've been blogging on this, Roderick, since 2009. So there is a ton of content on everything that you and I have just been discussing, and a lot more. So go check it out. You can search on the subject, whatever. All 7 books. I've got a page on there that describes the books. Of course, they're available in all of the sales channels. And I guess lastly, I've got an email address. It's roy.osing@gmail.com. And you know what? I'm really happy to have a conversation with individuals one-on-one about stuff. I mean, it's so much fun. I get people sending me their draft only statements. Roy, I've drafted my only statement, or I've got this marketing strategy for red oceans. What do you think? Oh, man, make my day. So please use me and let me help you on your journey.
Yeah, and all that'll be in the show notes, gang, too. So you don't have to swerve off the road trying to write down Roy's email. But I think people let's just say the public in general, like I love having conversations with business owners. And it sounds like a sales tactic when I'm like, we can hop on a 20, I'll send you off with a great plan. If we can work together, great. If not, also great. And they don't
Yeah,
believe you.
I
I
know.
don't have to do any of this. I
Yeah,
thoroughly enjoy talking to
yeah,
people about their business.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I totally
exactly.
feel you there. I want to ask a selfish question.
Yep.
What does success mean for Roy?
Well, it's going to sound a bit, altruistic. And so I'm not really that kind of a guy. I'm pretty hard-nosed and results and performance driven. But the reason that I'm doing what I'm doing now is basically to try and change the conversation out there. Okay, everything you and I have just talked about is about changing the way we talk about business, the way we talk about success, the way we talk about performance. And I'd like to see more of that out there. And I got to tell you, and I think it's a failing on my part. I'm not happy that we're moving the yardsticks. Maybe it's I'm not doing a good enough job. I mean, I'm using venues like this to try and spread my word about some different ways of disrupting business and being contrarian in a way that people care about and respect. And I'm finding the adoption rate is really really slow. And I try and diagnose that, and I think it's due primarily due to the strength of the system that we're in, where we have been taught certain things and we've been rewarded for certain things. And to move off those is high risk and high emotional energy. And people just don't want to do that. Like a small business owner, I'll talk to say, well, how's the business going? They'll say, fine, I'm happy. And I go, well, have you considered doing blah, blah, blah? Well, no, why would I? I mean, I'm happy doing what I'm doing, right? You've heard this before. So the motivation, unless there's a crisis, the change isn't there. And so success for me would be to, to have more conversations with people about what you and I are talking about. How to grow a business using practical, proven, audacious ways and have fun with the language. Why should I kill a dumb rule, Roy? What the hell? What is strategic about pain, Roy? Let's talk about that. Notions that I put out there on the right-hand side of the axis with colorful language to get people's attention so they ask, what the hell is hiring for Goosebumps? And why is it strategic? Oh, I love to have more conversations like that. And I thank you for this one because it's been awesome for me.
I love it, man. Like I said, we'll have to have you on again. I mean, there's certain guests that I try to keep the show 20, 30 minutes because that's where people are on a drive, they're on a walk, And but
Yeah.
man, we could go on for hours. So listen, the last guest left you a question. And I tell everybody, the poor listeners have to hear this every show, but it's crazy to me how apropos the questions become. Like they don't know, I have such a wide variety of people on. They don't know who the next guest is going to be, but the question always seems to fit. Thank you, universe, for delivering these questions to me. But before I ask you your question, which was left by Steve Prada, what question would you like to leave for the next guest?
What are you doing to be different?
I love it. All right. So when he told me this question, I thought it was very broad, but you already touched on it 40 times, and it was simply, what is your why?
What is my why? Well, I'm dissatisfied with the state of affairs. That's why. I mean, I think we do a woefully inadequate job of explaining to customers why they should buy from us, why they should relate to us versus the competitors. I think we spend way too much thinking and believing that academic dogma will make us successful. I think we spend way too much giving academic professionals the currency that they have in the marketplace. Because when you're chasing red oceans, you're not being helpful. And so that's the stuff that the why, when all of that stuff is going on, it just drives me to be a little more direct and reduce my filters. As you probably know, my filters are eroding as we speak in terms of promulgating the stuff that I know works and to not denigrate. It's just like I keep telling people, put the textbook down. I'm an advocate of education, but I've learned there is a limit. Let me help you go beyond the textbook. Will you please? and have fun in the process, right? Because an A in my world is getting an MBA, which I define as a master in business achievement. It's not a master in business administration. Success doesn't come through administration, baby. It comes through achieving remarkable results. And so that's why I'm extremely pissed off and upset about the way things are being done in business today. There you go.
Here, here.
Surprise.
Here, here. I was reading a book this morning. I'm a voracious reader. I read for at least an hour or two every day. And it was ironic that the topic was, we don't need more information. And people read the information, they don't take action, they get overwhelmed with the information, and then they want more information to read about the overwhelm and how they can, and they never actually do the thing. Right?
Well, I want you to read Be Different or Be Dead, The Audacious, Unheard of Ways. I took a startup to a billion, and you will chuckle when you go through it because it'll just be going over this stuff, hopefully a way that resonates well with you. Like I'm a firm believer that people learn differently. And so I keep coming at the same stuff in different ways. Okay. The same stuff in different ways. Nothing's changed about the basic content. Okay. I've added to it as I learn more about my stuff. Like the cravings piece, I just kind of like fine tuned over the last 12 months because it became clearer and clearer to me where I need to go in my strategic game planning process to make it even more relevant, particularly to small business. So the cravings piece just kind of came out. The only statement has always been there. I'm just getting a little better, I think, at actually pulling it out of people's heads because they already know it. They just don't have the framework and context to do it and so forth. So yeah, interesting.
Yeah. I mean, in coaching, the client is creative, resourceful, and whole. The answers are in there. They're in me. It's why I have a coach and my coach pulls it out of me.
Yeah.
And, I love when you talk about the craving because I work with a lot of home builders, custom home builders, 3 to 10 million. They have capped out because there's no more time to clean up the slop from their team. They never built systems. Now they don't have the time to build the systems. So what do they crave? They crave getting back to being able to play golf. They crave what they thought being a CEO looked like. They crave not missing the T-ball game. They crave a date night with their wife where they're not on their phone. But that's what they think they want. So that's what I sell them. And then I give them what they actually need, which is why do they have trouble delegating? Why are they afraid of automation? Why do they think they're the only ones that can do it as well as the next guy? And
Yeah.
I love that reframe of the craving. It's brilliant.
The only comment I would make is when we talk about cravings, it's not about us. It's about the who.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it's about the customer groups, the people we're trying to serve in order to get the revenue growth goals we're after. And so when somebody's trying to figure out what Roy craves, it's about it's about having a conversation. It's about in a way that is respectful, asking questions and clarifying. It's not about privacy issues. I mean, I've had some ridiculous people claim that I was suggesting that we invade privacy by trying to figure out what people desire. They completely miss the frickin' point, right? It's like whatever. But all you have to do is have a conversation and you learn. The secret I found is you need to record them.
Mm.
I did a podcast with a buddy of mine that we're going to publish in a month or so. It's called Why Audacious Leaders Are Amazing Note Takers. And the whole premise is based on what you and I are just talking about, right? To what extent do we ask questions, get information that nobody else has, and we record it in some way and we use it in the marketing process and the strategic process later. It's not just a note for a note, right? It's a note with a strategic goal. And that's really important. And so, the cravings takes life, and people have used different ways. I mean, I say I'll have fun when people say, okay, what do you lust for? What do you covet? And I go, what? And that in itself is fun, right? Because it all of a sudden turns into a conversation about why I'm interested in cravings. And they go, huh, okay. Yeah. So
Right.
anyways.
Way to break the ice real
You
fast, right?
can't you can't take yourself too seriously, my friend.
That's the truth. That's the truth.